You're watching New York's very own PIX11 News Closeup with Marvin Scott.
This morning, you'll hear from Councilman Joe Borelli, the Republican challenger running for public advocate, the office he attempted to abolish. And he's an attorney who wants to be the top lawman in Queens, Joe Murray, challenging the Democrat in the race for district attorney.
Now from 42nd and 2nd, this is New York's very own PIX11 News Closeup with Marvin Scott.
Good morning. The Office of Public Advocate, well, it's probably the most maligned office in city government. The position holds little power, often acting as a stepping stone to higher office, but it is a position that is first in line of mayoral succession. Jumaane Williams, he beat 16 other candidates in a special election earlier this year to fill the seat vacated by Letitia James, who is now the state's Attorney General. Williams is the Democrat who will face, in the election in November, Republican Councilman Joe Borelli. In the City Council, he was the co-sponsor of a bill to abolish the very office he wants to occupy. Welcome, Joe Borelli.
Good morning.
Begs the question, why are you running for an office you want to eliminate?
Well, partially it's to either reform the office or to make good on my promise to abolish it. You led off with the fact that this is an office that is remarkably useless based on the powers given to it by the city charter. So if I come in, when I win, it's either going to be we're going to reform the office to make it something worth something to the taxpayers or abolish its very existence. We're going to spend about $30 million this year to elect and staff a public advocate with so few duties that the person, as you said, is just there to basically set themselves up for future employment.
Well, no practical purpose for this office, which was formed back in 1993. So what actually does the public advocate do?
Well, the charter doesn't even give it its own section, right? The comptroller has a section, the mayor has a section. The public advocate actually gets lumped in with the city council. The role is really to be a bully pulpit. So every public advocate has a choice on which issues they want to speak out against. The current public advocate, Jumaane Williams, he is an activist. Unfortunately, there is no shortage of liberal activists in city government. If I come in, the issues I would talk about are those that affects taxpayers, the people that are suffering through the fines, fees, and tolls of the de Blasio administration, the forgotten people of the outer boroughs who have to commute to work every day. Those are the people I'm going to speak about because that's unlike who the majority of people in City Hall speak about.
So you talk about reform and making this office really meaningful. What you plan to do is not much different from what Democrat Jumaane Williams is planning to do.
No, it goes further. You know, Jumaane and I both agree that the Department of Investigation should be under the purview of the public advocate. We saw this current mayor actually get rid of his DOI commissioner when the investigation started to look at him. So by keeping this under the independent eyes of the public advocate, that would automatically be beneficial to the public. Going further than that, this is an elective office by the people of the city of New York. We should have a representative on the boards and commissions and authorities that actually make the most rules governing our lives, the TLC, the MTA, all of these boards that actually affect us every day. That's a role the public advocate should want to adopt and be a member of those commissions.
You have a record of voting against numerous LGBTQ related bills, particularly transgender issues. You voted against when you were in the Assembly and voted against while you're in the City Council.
I've actually supported a lot of gay and transgender issues.
You're more.
You're talking about the gender bill, which came up in Albany every single year, which allows men to use women's restrooms. If the bill allows men to use women's restrooms, I'm against it. When it doesn't do that, I'm happy to consider it.
But you voted against transgender issues beyond the restroom issue. But this, your record up in the Assembly and in the City Council has been negative.
Again, if the bill we're talking about is gender, which is the most significant bill that affects transgender rights, if the bill allows men to use the women's restroom, then I, yes, vote against it.
What about the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act, which was signed into law? You voted against that?
That's the gender bill.
That is the gender bill. Well, the question is, a city this large, when you're voting against such legislation, and you are a Republican in a predominantly Democratic city, isn't your campaign an uphill battle right now?
My campaign is certainly an uphill battle, but the reasons, and by all accounts, it's probably going to be tough to win. The problem that most people face is that the reasons for electing someone like me to the public advocate office still are going to exist whether I win or not. Someone has to pull Bill de Blasio back into reality, back into moderation, back in towards respecting the taxpayers, and that's just something he's never thought of. Everything, with Bill de Blasio comes to tax and spend more, unfortunately.
Going to take a break. Let's take a break, come back and talk about some of the issues in the campaign right now for public advocate of the city of New York with Joe Borelli, who is the Republican candidate. We'll be right back.
You're watching New York's very own PIX11 News Closeup with Marvin Scott.
Back now with City Councilman Joe Borelli. He is the Republican candidate in the race for public advocate in the general election November 5th. You've been a major critic of Mayor de Blasio and critical of his time away from the city running for president. As we start this taping today, he has withdrawn from that race. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, the big question for the Sunday shows after us are going to be what happens to the one de Blasio? Where does he or she go? The reality is Bill de Blasio's polling throughout the presidential race tells us more about who we are as New Yorkers. I mean, when not one person around the country in all these polls is saying, I want to emulate what New York has done under Bill de Blasio, that says more about the man we elect and what his ambitions are and what his priorities are and what his abilities are than anything else. And that's a stark reality for New Yorkers.
You have particularly targeted the Thrive operation, which is run by his wife, Charlene, multi-million dollars to help the homeless in the city. And you've been very critical of that. And you say the money's been squandered on that.
Well, it has. I mean, this is a program that started 5 or 6 years ago under the guise of helping mentally ill people on our streets. And by all objective accounts, these goals are not met. The mayor's management report came out this Friday and said that, in fact, most of the goals of Thrive aren't being met at all. Yet this is a program we still continue to throw $250 million per year. There are some good things about Thrive New York. Most of the good things about Thrive New York were programs like school guidance counselors we were already doing anyway. So ending this program, returning some of those duplicative roles back to their original agency might be something that helps.
Now, I have to ask you this, was probably the major problem still unresolved in New York is the homeless problem. We have so many homeless on the streets. The mayor said this was going to be his top priority. We still have the people out there. As public advocate, that has very little power right now. What could you do to rein in the homeless in this city?
Well, think about this. I mean, the homeless crisis was de Blasio's #1 priority, and yet he's been incapable of actually addressing it over the 6 years he's been mayor. I mean, that says more about him than anyone else. I mean, the issue that de Blasio has is that he doesn't bring issues to the communities he represents. We have actually a homeless shelter coming in my district. It was a place that met with little opposition. It probably was the right place in that district, and he did it by actually engaging people in the community, right? When you go to these communities, whether it's Brooklyn, Queens, and elsewhere, and you try to shove shelters down people's throat, you're not going to get much progress. And that's the unfortunate fact for Bill de Blasio's entire plan.
Councilman, I have to ask you this. You're a supporter of President Trump. You ran his campaign here in New York in 2016 in a city which doesn't favor him much. How do you think that's going to play into your campaign?
I wish it would change, and I can't deny I support President Trump. I'm probably going to vote for him again. But there's one person in this race who supported President Trump. That's me, right? There's one person in this race, Jumaane Williams, who actually endorsed Mayor de Blasio. This is the role of public advocate. It's supposed to be a check on Bill de Blasio or whoever occupies that mayor's seat, not Donald Trump. So, yeah, I support Trump. People might not like that. But Jumaane Williams actually endorsed Bill de Blasio and is part of the reason we have this second term of the mayor himself.
Now, Jumaane Williams is very popular. He was on the city council.
I like the guy.
All right. And you both have similar plans for the office of public advocate. What is it that I have to ask you sets you apart from him? Why should the voters vote for you instead of Jumaane Williams?
Jumaane Williams has always been a very earnest and eager liberal progressive activist. He is going to use the bully pulpit of his office to continue pulling Mayor de Blasio further to the left. I'm going to speak for those people in the middle and try to bring Mayor de Blasio back towards reality in some cases, back towards the center, back towards issues like property tax reform, something that affects my constituents, something that affects people in outer boroughs in Queens and Brooklyn and elsewhere. The mayor talks a big game like he wants to have a millionaire's tax and make the tax system more equitable, and yet the only tax that really generates revenue for the city is the most regressive tax I've ever heard of, where people who live in de Blasio brownstones worth millions of dollars pay peanuts, but regular people who live in outer borough Queens pay double and sometimes triple the amount.
Let me take up another issue because it really is really gotten many people upset. Closing of Rikers Island. They wanted to close Rikers Island, and it's already passed the Planning Commission. It's right now before you in the City Council, and to establish 4 smaller jails in 4 of the 5 boroughs.
Look, the saddest thing is that the Bloomberg administration was already funding and already on the way to reform the conditions on Rikers Island itself. Rikers Island has been the city jail for decades, for generations. It is otherwise a good facility for the purpose of keeping people against their will. Quite frankly, is what jails do. And there is no reason to bring these facilities that are unpopular, unwanted, really, onto the blocks of people who live and work in these communities. No matter where you go, right? There's a jail coming to Park Slope, the most progressive part of the city of New York, and even there they don't want it. So this is something that unites New Yorkers more than it divides us, that the people who are going to be forced to live next to these jails are unpopular. If only there was an island that we could put a jail on that's not next to the rest of the people.
What's the status of that bill right now?
Well, it's coming to the City Council through ULURP, and it has to go through the full ULURP process.
But this would not take effect until 2026, correct?
No, it would, but now is the moment when the City Council is going to be voting on it.
Okay, I have to quote you as saying, another quote, you pledged to make the office worth something or making you the last public advocate in abolishing that office.
That's it.
Is that bill still before the City Council to abolish it?
If I cannot...
You're a co-sponsor.
Correct. If I cannot... I mean, this is probably, a record for politicians. If I can't do the job that people elected me to do, make this office of public advocate worth something, I will work equally hard, if not harder, to abolish it and not waste all this money we do every couple of years to elect and staff an office with 50 or 60 people that really provide very limited services to people in New York. 311 is a much better system than calling the public advocate.
Okay, the race is on. November 5th, the Office of Public Advocate, Councilman Joe Borelli is the Republican candidate up against the Democrat Jumaane Williams, the current public advocate.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
and best of luck to you. We're going to take